Hey, what is going on YouTube? JayzTwoCents here, and today we're going to take a look at the not so new, but definitely still worth talking about, ASUS Matrix Platinum R9 290X graphics card. This thing has got a shit ton of bells and whistles. We're going to talk about those bells and whistles, we're going to see how well it performs, and we're going to see whether or not this card, well, is worth your hard-earned dollars. And trust me, it still costs a lot of them. With the new Silencio Performance Optimized fans, the Cooler Master Neptune 240M delivers the perfect balance of noise and performance. Click the link in the description to find out more. Now this right here is the R9 290X Matrix Platinum Edition, which kind of indicates that maybe there's a non-platinum edition, but this is just what they're calling it. It's part of the Republic of Gamers line, which is, as you know, tailored towards hardcore gamers, overclockers, and enthusiasts. Now this card still has a heck of a price premium. Now I have not reviewed any R9 290Xs. This is actually my first R9 290X review. I did take a look at the MSI R9 Gaming last year when it very first launched, but we're going to go ahead and take a look at the R9 290X today for a couple of reasons. One, it's a badass card, and I wanted to take advantage of taking a look at this card. And two, the R9 290 and 290Xs are starting to really come down in price because as Maxwell launched, and the 970 and the 980 were giving amazing quality and quantity of FPS per dollar, it was forcing AMD to respond, and of course, that response is lowering the price. Now, this card is still pretty expensive. In fact, at the time of reviewing, if you can find it in stock, it's still about $450 US. That's a lot of money. But you can find 290Xs now for as low as $299. That's pretty amazing in itself. But this card is pretty expensive still because it is an all custom PCB. Now I'm not going to get into a whole lot of the super specs, if you will. I want to talk about what makes this card different from the rest. Now this card is a dual BIOS card. It has an LN2 BIOS or liquid nitrogen BIOS as well as a standard BIOS. Now, if you were a hardcore overclocker and you were doing things like liquid nitrogen, you'd be doing things like custom BIOS hacking and volt mods and things like that to be able to get unlocked voltage without a software or a soft mod, which is like software mod. You'd do a hard mod to get maximum voltage unlocked, and you guys would be doing all kinds of custom blowtorching on here to keep things from from frosting up and freezing where you don't want them to. Well, ASUS has kind of gone ahead and figured all of those things out, those little custom touches that overclockers are putting, or LN2 overclockers are putting on their cards, and they just went ahead and built it in. For instance, on the back of the card here, you have a safe mode which you can boot into if you corrupted something and you just want to revert to a safe BIOS. It's got a BIOS on here that it copies from over to the standard BIOS, which it uses to reflash itself if you somehow brick the card. That is a really cool feature. It's something I wish I had on my 780s when I bricked at least the one that I ended up bricking. But on the back here, it has a 4-pin Molex that if you flip this little toggle switch right here on the back, it's kind of hard to see. It turns on a heater. It's kind of like defrosting the windows in your car, or like airplanes, how they have the defroster switch on the wings. What it does is it sends a heat circuit. It just heats up a circuit that basically traces out the memory, and it will defrost the memory. So if you're running LN2, your GPU can freeze and you're not going to freeze the memory, which could actually hurt stability in extreme overclocking. Now it's got the dual fans on here, the custom front fan and a custom rear fan based on the heat pipes and the way that the heatsink is set on here. Now the heatsink runs the entire length of the card. It's pretty damn heavy actually. But it's anodized black. It looks really, really sweet. You don't see silver showing through. Black anodized heat pipes on there look fantastic. They don't have a sore thumb or stick out like a sore thumb. And the nice red accent because it is Republic of Gamers. Input output, it's pretty standard. Dual DVI, HDMI, and DisplayPort. It's got a nice ASUS Matrix backplate on here, which faces the right way when you look at it. Some companies didn't think far enough ahead to put the lettering on there reversed so that when it's installed, it's actually upside down, and that's kind of annoying to look at. It's dual 8-pin power source requirement on there, so it's not the standard 6-pin and 8-pin which the 290X has. It's a dual 8-pin, and here is the dual BIOS slider right there, LN2 and standard. Now, there's not a whole lot else to talk about on here other than the ROG logo on here does light up and change colors based on the load of the graphics card. It's blue for no load, green for a light load, orange for a medium load, and red for a heavy load on the graphics card. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and plug this thing into my test rig, which is a 4770K, 16 gigabytes of Corsair 1866 megahertz RAM, overclocked to 2 gigahertz. And, well, the rest is a MSI Empower Z97 motherboard on there. So let's go ahead and throw this thing in there and see how well it performs.
Transition.
Okay, the R9 290X Matrix Platinum from ASUS. Now, I've spent a week with this card, a solid week of tweaking, tuning, overclocking, benchmarking, and doing it over and over and over and over and over again. Now, one would probably ask themselves, Jay, why are you spending so much time overclocking this card over and over and over again? Well, it's because I couldn't determine if maybe I was doing something wrong. Maybe it was a poor bin, maybe it was a bad card. I don't know, because I could not get the thing to be stable over 1090 megahertz. Now, JJ over at ASUS says that that card is pretty average when it comes to overclocker. Now, he did say the low side of average, but basically most people get anywhere between 1100 to 1125 megahertz. Now that got me thinking, this is a custom card, completely built from the ground up from ASUS specs. It's got tons of power phases, the best VRMs, the best chokes, the best capacitors, best PCB layout. Everything in there was just hand-picked and cherry-picked, and it was like the best card that they could imagine building for AMD and the 295X and the Hawaii-based GPU. But it really comes down to, once again, the silicon lottery. Now, this particular card was not a fantastic overclocker, but I went ahead and noticed that even though I was running it at 1090, which was 40 megahertz higher than their standard 1050 clock, even when I was playing with all of the GPU tweak settings, you have to use their GPU tweak program if you want to get full unlocked capability with the card of voltage and whatnot. Now, I couldn't put the voltage any higher than 1.3 volts by choice, because if I did, the VRMs got smoking hot, and over time they would start to degrade and get artifacting and then crash. So I couldn't get anywhere near the 1.4 volts that's allowed on this card. So I really started thinking, is this card terrible? I won't say the card is really terrible for everybody. Now, what do I mean by that? Who is this card tailored to? Is this card tailored towards overclockers, or is this card tailored toward mainstream purchasers? And in fact, the correspondence I had with ASUS pretty much confirmed it. This is a card designed for people looking for water cooling, LN2 cooling, etc., etc. Which to me kind of begged the question, why put this big old beefy giant air cooler on there? I mean, the card still got to 90 degrees Celsius on the gamer profile. Now, this thing has some profiles in it. You can just click the G and it goes to a gamer profile, which is a tiny, tiny overclock, but it's still got to 90 degrees Celsius with this big old giant cooler on there. And ASUS again confirmed it. Well, you know, the Hawaii GPU is very hot. So that means even this massive cooler was having a hell of a time keeping it cool. Now, they said the card was really tailored towards LN2 coolers and water coolers. Now, that really makes me a little bit disappointed in the sense that they addressed that with the 780 Poseidon by putting a built-in water block as well as a heat sink on here for air cooling. They should have done that with this card, especially at the price premium this card is coming in at. Now, if they had done that with this card, I would have hooked this up to the loop and had a field day with it, but they didn't. It means that this card is really tailored towards people who would probably rip the cooler off and do custom cooling anyway. Chances are that's not you, and that's where my problem is with this card. This card has all the bells and whistles on it that will be attractive to people who are doing power user type of stuff. Now, when it comes to this card on air, it was fairly mediocre. I mean, it hangs with the 970. Now, I say it hangs with the 970 because the 970 was actually beating it in just about every test I threw at it. which made me think that the poor bin of this GPU, I won't say poor bin, the poor lottery draw of this GPU just made it so to where the 290X was getting beat by the brand new Maxwell 970, and the 970 was doing it cooler, way more efficient, better FPS, and a smaller graphics card. So really, this card, if you are the kind of person that's doing LN2 overclocking, chances are you're probably not watching this video anyway. And if you are, then you're probably lost. But if you're the kind of person that wants to walk into Micro Center or walk into Fry's or order the card off Newegg and slap it in your system and be up and running, I personally feel there are better options out there, like the MSI Lightning or the Sapphire Vapor X. There are other 290Xs that score way higher on average, are cooler, and just a better overall experience, in my opinion. Now, with that said, guys, take this video for what it is. I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm just telling you my experience with this card. When I started this channel 2.5 years ago, I said that my goal is to give you guys my experiences and my opinions when it comes to technology. And I'm going to show it exactly how it happens, even if that means that some people might not be too happy with the review. But guys, my devotion and my dedication is to the audience and not to manufacturers. So hopefully you guys understand. As always, this has been my experience. Take it with a grain of salt, compare it with other people's experiences, and trying to get a collective big picture of what's happening with the hardware that you guys are reviewing. You should take no single reviewer's advice or opinion as gospel by themselves. Always look at the collective and form your own opinion based on what a majority of people are saying. As always, guys, follow on Twitter if you have any questions, or even if you just want to berate me for not liking this particular AMD card or feeling that there are better options out there. As always, guys, follow on Facebook if you're not into the whole Twitter thing, and I certainly hope to see you in the next controversial Jay's 2 Cents video. Take care.